Hi, I'm Kevin Hatley and welcome to Kevin Hatley Photography in my office. This is a channel that I've set up to share my experiences of wildlife and nature with others. So let's go. Hi, welcome to my new wildlife photography series, which is going to be 3 parts. Part 1, I'm going to look at how I approach wildlife, and then part 2, I'm going to go through how to actually observe wildlife, and then finally in part 3, I'll look at some fieldcraft skills. This series of videos is aimed at beginners and intermediates. I'm no expert by any means, so what gives me the credentials to do this 3-part series? Well, I served 24 years in the British Army, so I think when it comes to the countryside and moving about, observing wildlife and getting close to it, I am a bit of an expert at it. There are basically 2 approaches to approaching wildlife. Approach number 1 is where you sit and wait for the wildlife to approach you. So that's like sitting in a hide on a nature reserve, or where you put up a hide out in the countryside and you wait for the wildlife to approach you so that you can get that photograph. I will be dealing with that in a future video on how to photograph wildlife from hides. In this video, what I want to do is talk to you about how to approach wildlife out in the countryside, on your 2 feet, walking about, observing them, watching them, and then getting that opportunity to actually get the photograph that you want. You don't get photographs like these just by simply walking up to them. I've been doing wildlife photography now for a number of years, and I've learned all sorts of mistakes with regards to trying to get close to wildlife to get that opportunity to get the photograph that you're after. So it is important how you walk about the countryside. 2 things that will give you away straight away are movement and noise, and what I'll do is I'll talk about them in detail when I go through the part 3 series in fieldcraft. But as I said, in this video what I want to do is give you my approach to how to photograph wildlife out in the countryside. In wildlife photography you can have what could be considered some of the best photographic gear in the world and equipment to try and photograph wildlife. But if you go about approaching that wildlife in the wrong manner, you make too much noise, your movement's too quick, what you're going to do is one thing only, and that is you're going to scare the wildlife, and you'll lose that opportunity to get the photograph that you're after. That's why it's important that when you approach wildlife, you take a number of things into consideration. First and foremost, the welfare of wildlife is paramount. There's nothing more important than the welfare of wildlife. It's not about getting photographed. That's the bonus. Secondly, you need to make sure that as you approach wildlife, that you approach them in a safe manner and you approach them from a safe distance. Earlier this year I did a project on how to photograph hares, and what I'll do is I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this video. And the reason for that is I learned so much about how to approach wildlife. Hares are very skittish. Slightest movement, noise, they'll be alerted and it's game over. One of the first things we need to understand as a wildlife photographer is the perspective of the actual wildlife itself. Our perspective is to get as close as we can and get that photograph. With wildlife, their perspective is all about survival. So they're constantly on the alert, looking out for danger. And we need to understand how wildlife go about their daily routine. Now, wildlife will be doing one of 4 things I would suggest. They'll either be eating, drinking, resting, or moving. And when they're moving, They're normally going to eat, drink, or go to rest. That's kind of, in a nutshell, the daily routine of wildlife. Now, in order for us to get close to them, I would suggest that those are the times that offer the best opportunity for us to get close to them. One of the things that I want to go into a little bit of detail about is something which is known as the circle of fear. Now, the circle of fear is basically the area around your subject that the animal has certain levels of awareness. So what I'll do now is I'll explain to you what I mean by the circle of fear. The circle of fear is a circle. At the centre of that circle is your subject, so that's where the wildlife is. The circle itself consists of 4 separate rings, and depending on which ring you're in, depends on the level of alertness of your subject. So if we start on the outside ring, which is ring number 1, in this ring your subject goes about its normal daily business and it's not concerned about you and what you're doing. So everything is normal. When you move into circle number 2, the animal is, or the subject is aware of your presence, but again it goes about its business as it normally does, and it's not too concerned. Now, when you enter into ring 3, this is where the levels of awareness are risen. In circle number 3, the subject is alerted to your presence. So things are going to change quite quickly here depending on what you do. So if you quicken your movements, you make a noise, that's going to alert your subject, and it's going to do one or two things. That then takes you into the centre ring, ring number 4, and in that ring it's game all over. The subject's going to do one or two things. It's either going to run or it's going to fight. So that is a brief explanation of the circle of fear. It consists of 4 rings. Ring number 1, normal. Ring number 2, awareness. Ring number 3, alerted. Ring number 4, game over, alarmed. Okay, what I'd like to do now is kind of bring all that together and just give you a short demonstration of how I go about my approach of approaching wildlife out in the countryside. So it'll be a short video clip. Clip number 1 will be how not to do it, and clip number 2 will be the way that I do it. And it's basic, it's not complicated at all. So let's go. Okay, so that was just a quick short demonstration of how I go about moving about in the countryside. In the first clip you see that I just completely wrong, moved straight from cover out into the open, quick movements, stuck out like a sore thumb, and then my movement was quick, movement with my camera was quick, taking loads of shots on the camera as well. So everything was to do with movement, wasn't in cover at all. In the second part, you will notice that I took my time coming out from cover, so I stopped, observed, had a quick look to see if there was anything there. Once I was happy, I then moved out onto the hedgerow and kept myself tucked into the side, up against the cover. My movement was slow and deliberate. When it come to use my camera, again, the movement was slow and deliberate. And when I was taking the photographs, I wasn't using long bursts, just taking a couple of shots, move, take a couple of shots. So that just gives you an idea of how I go about moving about in the countryside. As wildlife photographers, I would suggest to you that circles number 1 and 2 are the places that you want to be to try and get your initial photographs. To get into circles 3 and 4, you really have to either be in a hide or you need to be completely concealed, fully camouflaged, lying low on the ground in your own makeshift kind of hide to get those really close-up photographs. So I hope that's explained the circle of fear. But what I'll also do is I'll just quickly explain to you how I experienced this when I photographed hares. So in this first photograph you'll see a group of hares lying low to the ground with their ears pointing backwards. That's normal behaviour for hares during their daily routine. They lie out in the open, in fields, low to the ground, resting and eating. In the next photograph you'll see that this hare here, just by looking at its eyes, it's aware that there's something there. It's not quite sure. Now I was actually lying in a hide in a hedgerow taking these photographs. It was aware that there was something there. It wasn't quite sure what it was, but it just continued to do what it was doing. The next photograph, you now see that the hare's fully alert, and when a hare's fully alert, it will stand up on its hind legs, a bit like a meerkat, to scan the ground to see what was around it. And what actually happened in this instance, it was dog walkers that actually alerted the hare, and then the next thing, ring number 4, they were gone. So I kind of hope that explains it to you. Thanks for watching this edition of Kevin Hatley Photography and how to approach wildlife. I hope that you've learnt something from it, and if only one person has, then I've achieved my aim, because that's what I'm here for. I'm just here to share my experience and the knowledge that I do have with others, so that they can enjoy and improve their journey with wildlife photography. All I would ask is that if you've liked this, could I ask you to hit the like button? If you'd like to see more of this, could I ask you to subscribe to my channel, Kevin Hatley Photography. Doesn't cost anything, it's completely free. It just gives me that incentive to keep going out into this beautiful countryside and do what I like to do best, and that's enjoy the wildlife. And the bonus being is to get the photographs, because as I said, the welfare of wildlife is of paramount importance. And look forward to part 2 of my wildlife photography series on how to observe wildlife. Until the next time, keep safe, take care, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.